I have 2 o'clock, Chair Rars.
Thank you. I would good afternoon, everybody, and I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the St'áilis. Thank you to all my APC members for being here today, and welcome to anyone that is watching this on Zoom. So this brings our meeting of Thursday, January 13th, 2022 at 2 p.m. to order. I will pass this over to the next item of business.
Thank you, Chair Rars. We'll move on to number 2, introduction of late items. Do you have any late items?
No, I don't have any.
Thank you. Could we have approval of the agenda then, please?
Is there a motion to accept the agenda from Ken Gisborne, seconded by Andy? All in favor? Yeah, all in favor. And the next order of business.
Thank you. We'll move on to adoption of the minutes. We have the Advisory Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 27, 2021 here for adoption.
Do we have a motion to adopt those or to accept? Motion from Andy, seconded by Donna. Sorry, you weren't here. You can still adopt, but Ken, do you want to second those? Seconded by Ken. Has everyone had, so sorry, that's all in favor? Okay, all in favor. Has everyone had a chance to review those, to look at those? Is there any errors or omissions? So that is passed then. Next order of business.
Thank you. So we'll move on to number 5. We have items for discussion, and we have Ken Cossey, a planning consultant here, who is going to give us a presentation on the official community plan update for 2022. Mr. Cossey.
Thank you. So are we gonna share the screen, or are we gonna use the one that's up already? Here we go. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody. It's a nice day for the ducks. But anyhow, today we're gonna talk about the official community plan update. And so we can move on to the next slide, please. So what we're going to talk about today is what is an official community plan. We'll talk a little briefly about the consultation strategy. We'll review the building awareness report, which I understand has been attached to your agenda. We'll look at some of the questions to date, and then we'll ask if you got any other further questions. Next slide, please. So overall, an official community plan is a very comprehensive policy document designed to guide the physical, environmental, economic, social, and cultural development of the village. Whether you're a small municipality or a large municipality, this OCP expresses the community's vision and is a blueprint for future development. The OCP showcases the municipality, encourages investors to invest, visitors to visit, and non-residents to relocate. It needs to be visual, attractive, and thorough in its presentation of goals, objectives, and policies, and it must align with provincial interests to foster responsible growth. Finally, the vision and the goals of the OCP should be set up in such a manner that the success of the vision and the goals can be measured at some point to see if the OCP is achieving its goals. That's one of the problems that you have with an official community plan, is everybody comes up with all these grandiose vision statements and goal statements, but they don't set it up so that you can measure it accurately. For example, one of the common things that a lot of municipalities like to talk about is the preservation of agricultural land, but they don't put any measures in to see how their official community plan has met those objectives. And one of the simple ways of measuring that would be to say, we've got X number of acres of agricultural land right now, and in 5-10 years, we've got 50% less. So what have we been doing wrong about everything? So that's what we mean by some sort of measure. So next slide, please. The current OCP was adopted in 2007, and today is 15 years old. And please note that there's no requirement that stipulates how long an OCP should be in place. It is recommended that periodic reviews take place to ensure that the vision and the goals are still applicable today. For example, since the adoption of this, the community plan, there has been a changes on the, at the federal government level with respect to cannabis. And that wasn't envisioned in 2007. An OCP lays out the long-term vision for the community within section 2.3 of the village's current bylaw is the following vision. A residential and resort community with an attractive and inviting village core of shops and services. A strong commitment to maintaining the scenic qualities, the environment, the quality of life, and the vibrant and cultural life combined with a high standard of development. It is important that any new emerging trends and issues are captured in the OCP so that the revised OCP can address any trends effectively. Ensuring the successful implementation of the OCP requires a commitment that extends well beyond the date of adoption. A robust monitoring and evaluation program are a central part of this effort and is vital in equipping staff and elected officials with the information needed to respond to the evolving context of the community and to determine whether or not the objectives are still being achieved. So one of the key takeaways from that statement is that an official community plan is often seen by the public as a static document. And that's not necessarily true. It is a living, breathing document that needs to be revised and updated as we go through this process. Next slide, please. So associated with the vision of the current OCP, we have 10 goals. Goal 1 is to provide an efficient, equitable, and affordable public service. Goal 2 is establish a distinct pedestrian-oriented village center with a range of commercial services. Goal number 3 is develop tourism recreation features and activities for the benefit of residents and visitors. Number 4 is protect the views of the lake and the surrounding mountains. Goal 5 is protect and maintain air and water quality and biodiversity. Goal 6 is to promote compatible residential and tourism development and community relationships. Goal 7 is manage traffic and parking and promote transportation alternatives. Goal 8, provide a mix of housing types for all ages and incomes. Goal 9 is restore and protect Miami River and related aquatic systems. And goal 10 is reduce community greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. The authority to create an official community plan is found within sections 471 to 478 of the Local Government Act. And it talks in there about the purpose of the plan. The village may adopt one or more official community plans. A lot of people, what they refer to when they adopt one or more official community plans is they'll call them secondary plans, area structure plans, neighborhood plans, but it's still basically an official community plan. And the OCP must be adopted as a schedule to a bylaw, and it must designate the area that it covers. There are certain contents and process requirements associated with it, as found in those sections of the Local Government Act, and additional policy statements may be included. We also have to talk about, or in the local government, there's also a discussion on how the consultation and engagement for the development of the OCP will be addressed. And we have to open up discussions with the local school board and how the OCP is adopted and what the effect of the official community plan is upon the village operations after that. Next slide, please. So turning now to the consultation process, we have to remember that there are many, many definitions on what consultation is, as outlined in the model below. The best approach is to set up a system that involves and engages the participants. As you can see here, what we've got is an information process, an involving process, and an engaging process. And the informing process is the arrow goes one way. Basically, it is the council or staff saying, you know, this is what we got to do. And it's basically talking down to and not really engaging the community members, other governments, or various stakeholders. And if we go out and we also ask people what they'd like to see, it's again, just a one-way street where information is fed in. So what we need to do is set up a process where information is respected, and it's a two-way street. It's going back and forth evenly. Next slide, please. So we have a strategy in effect right now. that was adopted by council most recently. I believe it was in December. But we have to understand that the world is currently in a state of transformation and uncertainty as we move through the COVID-19 experience. We have devised a preliminary engagement strategy that considers the opportunities for face-to-face, and if we need to, we can get back online. Some of the activities that we're looking at is website, advertising, in-person pop-up events, displays, online surveys, workshops, and workbooks. Part of the workshops would also include having or hosting, if we can, is a World Cafe concept, which is a method of having group discussions on certain topics. And as well, we send out referral letters, and information have been sent to a First Nation government and to various other agencies. And the information that we sent out was the Building Awareness Report. Next slide, please. So purpose of the Building Awareness Report, and this report is a blend of both technical information collected about the village and a summary of the results from the first community survey. Next slide, please. So our review process is basically started back in May to August. We were looking at the research and preparation of a background report, which included a gap analysis. We looked at transportation issues, land use issues, environmental issues, review of the regulatory requirements of an official community plan, and the initial community survey. And then we did a technical analysis, what type of use makes sense for that area and what sort of planning tools can be used. In December, we looked at the development of the consultation program, who to consult, and how do we collect community input. And we started the implementation of the consultation program, tools that we've identified, and the frequency of the community engagement, and we reviewed the background report. So between December and April 2022, December 2021 to April 2022, we're hoping to set up, again, depending upon the COVID situation, the virtual open house workshops, a World Cafe concept, prepare the draft bylaw, community survey with a tentative launch in January 2022, revision of the plan if required with community input, and then implementation of the consultation plan. April 2022 to July 2022, we're looking at an open house to look at a revision of the plan may result based upon the community input received, starting the formal adoption process, and referral of the bylaw to various agencies. July 2022 to September 2022, we're looking at a public hearing, a revision of the plan, and it may be required as a result of the community input received, the adoption of the bylaw, and that concludes the fourth and final reading of the bylaw. And yes, it is a tight schedule. And what I've done now is on my other projects, I'm moving away from working on other projects and just working exclusively on the village's OCP till it's completed in September or October of this year. Next slide, please. So the OCP update consists of 4 phases. You can see the 4 phases there to the right. Awareness building, which is we're referring to as phase 1, review new concepts, phase 2, design a new plan for phase 3, and the adoption process for phase 4. And currently we've just finished the phase 1 category. Next slide, please. So the OCP technical topics reviewed to date have included parks and recreation issues, transportation issues, municipal services issues, discussion on the population and growth. We've looked at the housing issues, the environmental issues, and various land use issues. Next slide, please. So starting with the population growth and summary, which are outlined on pages 6 to 10 of your awareness report, and starting with 2016 as the base population of 1,465. What we've done is to project it forward. This is not an exact science by any stretch of the imagination. This is just to give us some general ideas as to what the population can look like and the age cohort analysis that has been provided. So we get a rough idea of how many boys and girls are in the 0 to 5 category, or 5 to 10, or 5 to 9, 10 10 to 14, that sort of category. And that helps us plan out the community as we're looking at the various requirements that each age group may or may not need. So when we're doing our projections forward, we look at the age-specific fertility rates of the young ladies, and we look at and compare that with, and then contrast that with the age-specific death rates. And then we look at the in-out migration, and then we factor all of those things in, and we come up with an educated guess that the projected 2021 population will be between 1,476 and 1,636. And again, the projected population for 2026 was estimated to be 1,556 to 1,716. The current breakdown, and this is a 2016 population because the stats can project, or the stats can population analysis will be coming out sometime this year for 2021. But anyhow, the current breakdown for 2016, you can see that we have between ages of 0 and 14 is 9.8% of the population. Between 15 to 64 is the bulk, which is 55.2% of the population, with your average age of 52.4%, and 65 plus is at almost 35% of your total population. And no surprise here is your major employment by industry is accommodation and food services, which is 115 or almost 19% of your total workforce. Next slide, please. So turning now to the municipal services, as outlined on page 11 of your building awareness report, we have the storm drainage system, the sanitary sewer system, and the water system. The total length of your storm drainage system is approximately 10.3 kilometers, and the width range of the pipes are between 200 to 900 millimeters. For your sanitary, your total length of your regular system is 12.5 kilometers. Your forced main system is 3.5 kilometers. The width range for both systems is between 150 to 350 millimeters. And your water system, you have approximately 15.5 kilometers of water pipes, and your width of these pipes ranges from 50 millimeters to 350 millimeters. Next slide, please. So again, continuing on with your municipal services, you have 75 public and 14 private fire hydrants, with the most number of the private hydrants being on the Harrison Hot Springs Resort and Spa lands. And your road network systems consisting of both the roads looked after by the Harrison Hot Springs and the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure. For your local roads, you have 8.06 kilometers of roads, your collector roads, 3.71 kilometers, and your arterial roads is 4.71, almost 4.72 kilometers. Next slide, please. Then looking at your parks and recreation, we performed a review of the 7 community parks, including noting any or all of the following, what sort of amenities that they offer, such as benches, bike racks, flagpoles. Are they for arts and interpretive signage situation? Are they sports fields, tennis courts, playgrounds, showers, park signs, kiosks, fencing, shelters, picnic tables, and barbecue stands? And the summary of all of that information with the name of them is outlined on pages 12 to 20. Next slide, please. So the recreation sites, we have the East Sector lands, and this is a 127.8 hectare nature area that's ecologically sensitive, and that consists of various landscapes, and you have various trails in or adjacent to the village. This includes the Spirit Trail, the Bridle Trail Loop, Hicks Lake Loop, the Miami River Greenway Trail, McCoon's Trail, and the Lagoon Beach Walkway. And your closest provincial park is the Sasquatch Provincial Park, which is located north of Harrison Hot Springs. Next slide, please. Turning now to the transportation issues, which are identified on page 20 to 21 of the Building Awareness Report. You're serviced by BC Transit, and that's the Agassiz Harrison Connector, also known as Route 11. Approximately 25% of the village's workforce live and work in Harrison Hot Springs, and the balance travel elsewhere. Less than a 15-minute commute is the highest average duration of between 30 to 44 minutes. The breakdown for the main mode of commuting for workers in Harrison Hot Springs is as follows. Car, truck, van, just driver alone, 370. Car, truck, van as a passenger, 15. Public transit, none. Walking, 95. Bicycle, 20. And other methods is 10. Next slide, please. Turning now to your housing situation, as outlined on page 22 of the report. We've combined the 2016 census profile and the village's housing report that was prepared in 2019. So looking at the housing report, there's approximately, 928 dwelling units with approximately 720 that are owner occupied and approximately 162 that are rental households and 46 that are not occupied. Most houses in Harrison Hot Springs were built between 1991 and 2000 at approximately 295 homes, followed by 1961 to 1980 of 155 homes. The current Stats Canada breakdown, the dwelling type is as follows. Your single family dwellings, 515, other attached dwellings, 200, semi-detached, 10, rural housing, 45, apartment, flat, and a duplex, 20, apartment, less than 5 stories, 130, and movable dwellings, 5. Next slide, please. So your environmental plays a key component into how the planning process develops as well. And just from a general perspective, you're part of the Georgia Depression Eco Province and the Fraser Lowland Eco Section. And from a subsurface information, the related soil units allow for an analysis of the proposed use of land. The soil unit helps the user to understand the drainage capabilities or if the type of development can be supported by the soil unit. And within the boundaries of Harrison Hot Springs, there's 21 soil units as identified on the maps in the building awareness report. The surface drainage is either classified as very poorly drained or poorly drained, and the soil has been deposited by fluvial methods. The protection and enhancement of the natural environment is achieved through the land use regulations, landscape guidelines, and the use of public education. Next slide, please. So turning now to the land uses, the current OCP has the following main land uses designated: commercial, residential, resorts, and public use. And inside the commercial, you have the 4 categories of marine tourism commercial, waterfront commercial, village center, and tourist commercial. And residential, you have lakeshore residential, low development or low density residential, and medium density residential. There's a small portion of the agricultural land reserve inside the village's boundary. And also there's you've been designated fire smart community in 2019, which will necessitate the new development permit area being required to address those issues. And what the fire smart development permit area does, it looks to prevent the fire from going out from the village into the forest, and at the same time try to slow down the fire from coming from the forest into the village. Next slide, please. So now looking at the community survey, which was done in 2019 and as outlined on pages 28 to 30 of your report. This was done as a pre-pandemic community survey and placed on the village's website using SurveyMonkey. Please note that the community engagement process started before the village adopted the Bang the Table platform and the development of the GetIntoHarrison.ca program. This new program, Get Into Harrison, currently has over 400 users, and the survey will be repeated on the Get Into Harrison engagement site, because as you'll see it as we get into it further, we only had 56 responses to the first survey, and we're trying to get that a little bit higher. So this is why we're going to repost the survey onto the Get Into Harrison engagement site. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we had 56 responses. 66 of the respondents were age 55 plus. 46 of the respondents have lived for less than 5 years in Harrison Hot Springs. The average age of a household is between 50 to 64. Approximately 87% required the village to continue protecting the views of the lake and the surrounding mountains, and to protect and maintain the air and water qualities in the village's biodiversity. Approximately 60% of the 37 responses that we received on this question, the village should not be providing a mixture of housing types for all ages and incomes. And that, if that continues on, we get additional information on that, that could be a bit of a problem as we're moving forward, because the provincial legislation requires us to have policies and procedures in place to address those issues. So we'll look at that after we get the next survey results in, and we can discuss the next steps a little bit later after that. Next slide, please. So when we did it with a gap analysis, we just compared the current official community plan to various sections of the Local Government Act, and these are outlined on pages 31 to 32. In this case, I've deliberately left the literature smaller in the sections, but the reason I was doing that is just so that you can see that the top line there, Local Government Act requirement, does the current official community plan address this requirement? What was done, and if required, what type of follow-up is needed for the new official community plan. I was just trying to get everybody to focus on the top portion of this, and you can see what the end results are when you're looking at the gap analysis results on pages 31 and 32 of the report. Also, there's another tool that we can start looking at using is under section 484 of the Local Government Act. We can use what is called the Development Approval Information Requirements, which is a big, long word, and all it really means is impact analysis. It can be set up in such a way that the developer will have to pay for it, meet the requirements of what the village has, and then we can go from there. It can help to eliminate some concern. Some people say that it's going to do X, Y, and Z, and we don't have any information. So we can look at it and say, well, we've had these reports done up, and that's not the situation. And those reports, as I mentioned earlier, are done on the dime of the developer and to the requirements of the village. So we can talk about this is going to become an issue. What I mean by the requirements, when we say we want a geotech report done, and we want an engineer that's got X number of years of service, we want them to look at X, Y, and Z, and that is written into a bylaw. Next slide, please. So also, there's some of the things that we can be looking at is the section 488 development permit tools. A development permit tool is often seen as a way of stopping development, but it's, let's just even look at the name. It's called development permit tool, which means that development is going to happen. And it is, but what happens is that because there's concerns about for whatever reason, it's in place, it could be environmental reasons, hazardous conditions, farming issue, revitalization of a commercial area. Additional information is required before the development can proceed, and that's the whole purpose of a development permit area. And you can see down at the very bottom on the left-hand side there, it says promotion of greenhouse gas reduction. We have to get a policy created and get targets set to meet the current requirements of the Local Government Act. And in addition to this, since 2007, the province has brought in how we're going to encourage energy conservation and water conservation. So these are some of the things that we have to start looking at with the update. Next slide, please. So some of the other things too that we need to look at that have to be brought out is we have a policy that was created in 2018, the Community Amenity Contributions Policy. This is in a bit of a gray area because there's nothing in the Local Government Act that allows it. However, having said that, the ministry has come up with a policy directive that says that you can do it. And so we've done it under policy number 1.26 in the village office. But part of the transparency process associated with it is that we need to make sure that this policy or what we're going to do with it is also written up in the official community plan so that it's totally transparent and open to the public and to developers to understand what we're going to be trying to do with it. And then on page 34 is the various information sources that I used for the preparation of the building awareness report. And there's the picture of the entranceway to Harrison, I believe, what was that, 1966? Thought that was an appropriate place to place that picture. Anyhow, next slide, please. So questions to date. Is this going to be an update or a new official community plan? At this point in time, it will be a new, it's a combination of both. It will be a new official community plan. It won't be just an amendment, but it will also be an update. And a lot of the issues that we're looking at will need to be updated, like what we were talking about with the fire smart area, the greenhouse gases, all of those sorts of things. And the plan for updating the vision and the mandate, and this was provided earlier in the building awareness report while we were talking about the communication strategy and also our engagement process. Council has improved the engagement process, and there's 3 parts to it. That's First Nation governments, stakeholders, community groups, and residents of Harrison Hot Springs. Next slide, please. So just to reiterate, the engagement tools that we're going to be going over or looking at, and again, remember that it's COVID, it'll be COVID sensitive. We're looking at use of the village's website, use of advertising, in-person pop-up events if we can. And if we need to be, we can switch to online versions, displays, online survey, workshops, online or in person, and workbooks, again, also online or in person. Next slide, please. The process timeline that we mentioned was also outlined in the building awareness report. And from the OCP project management, who's going to be working on this and getting it done, and that will be myself. And I've been given permission to bring in 2 research assistants, which I'm in the process of doing right now. And the focus, as I said earlier, I will not be taking other projects. I will be focusing exclusively on getting the OCP update completed by the designated timeline for the village of Harrison. So that's going to take up a lot of my time. And so I figured it'd be prudent not to work on any other projects outside of this OCP update. Next slide, please. And thank you very much. And are there any further questions?
Thank you, Ken. That was a great presentation, very informative. Andy, do you want to start with you? Do you have any questions for Ken?
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, I did jot some notes down and just some clarification on some terms and things here. You mentioned a World Cafe, Ms. Cossey. What is that? How does that work?
Okay, what that is, it just sets up an environment similar to like what you've got right now in the Memorial Hall. And in one corner, we could be talking about the traffic issues. The next corner, we could be talking about environmental issues. And it's just a table, round table, and people sit there and they can doodle, they can talk about things, they can spend all their time at one table, or they can rotate every 10-15 minutes to every table throughout the World Cafe concept.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, thank you. Hicks Lake Loop. Hicks Lake is in Sasquatch Park. It's not in the village of Harrison. Why is that in our OCP? Just curiosity.
I just put it in there because these are tourist attractions and people come in and they attend these sorts of things, because we got to look at the outside stimuli that also affects the growth and development of Harrison.
Okay. I mean, I guess there are other trails and attractions in the area that could be included in as well. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but so but okay. Transportation other. What other transportation could there be aside from maybe boating?
Yeah,
On the lake?
that's the same thing I've been struggling with. And whenever I go back to any Census Canada official, they can't tell me what that is.
Okay. I mean, you covered everything else, we had walking, biking, car, what else is there aside from boats, So,
Exactly.
um,
My professional assumption is, perhaps it's a taxi or an Uber.
okay, fair enough, yeah, hadn't thought of that, yeah. That'd still be carved and wouldn't be very sustainable if you're doing that all the time, but.
No, no.
928 dwellings, does that include suites or people that have alternate accommodations in their homes?
That includes whatever was answered in the Stats Canada census.
Okay. Mhm. Okay. Then the Fire Smart DP area, can you elaborate a bit on that? I'm a little bit foggy as to what that the Fire Smart Development Permit area that you referred to.
Oh, okay. That will
What
be
does that mean?
what that does. That'll look like at the interface of the forest area, the forested area, the heavily treed area, whatever you like to refer to it as, and the residential areas of the village. And what we can look at is we can try to reduce any fuel in that area, require individuals to prune back their trees, that sort of stuff. Anything that can reduce fuel that can be utilized by the fire, because we don't want to have a situation like what we had in the interior this year.
So for example, in my place is in one of those places. I'm at the end of Echo, between right behind me is the trail, and then the slough, and then Bear Mountain. So I guess that would be me right there, right?
Yes,
So,
yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
So you
But we can't make it retroactive, so it just has to be from whatever date we've adopted the bylaw forward.
the bylaw, and that would be just asking owners to prune things back, or?
No. That would be when there's new development in those areas or redevelopment, then they'd have to follow the new requirements, because we can't force anybody who's built their house under the previous requirements. For example, let's just say that hypothetically, let's say October 25th, the bylaw gets adopted.
Mhm.
Those rules and regulations come into effect October 26th.
Got it. Okay. So it's for new development.
Yeah, at redevelopment.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. And I guess my only other comment was the community survey, 56 respondents. Oh my goodness. That's hardly representative of the
Yeah.
community. That's that would need to be, we need to do something to, go knocking door to door, put it on Facebook, whatever, to get more people involved there.
We even advertised for a gift basket, and we still had that low response.
Really? Wow.
And I can't remember, Rhonda would know better, if the winner of the gift basket actually even showed up to pick up their gift basket.
They did arrive to pick up that gift basket, and we have done several other surveys throughout the year. The most recent one had 221 responses, so our new engagement tool is working very well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Donna, do you have any comments or questions?
So, excuse me, Chair, just a reminder through the chair to the members, when you wish to speak, depress your talk button. And then when you're finished speaking, just shut it off. Thanks.
Yeah, Andy asked the questions I was going to, so I got the answer.
Okay, thanks, Donna. Ken, do you have any questions or comments for Ken?
Just two things. First of all, in the housing, the numbers, do they include the new housing developments that have occurred in the last 2 years? Because we've got about 150 new housing units that have come in since 2019. There's 105 in the one development 3 street package. And then there's another 47 in one across the street and another 10 just down the road. So it seems like we got about 150 or 160 new housing units, and the numbers in your report look like they're low. Doesn't appear to include those.
That's correct, because we took the Stats Canada, the 2016 and the 2019 data that was utilized, and we haven't updated it yet because we don't have the official information from Stats Canada yet. But yeah, but having said that, we did take that into account when we did our population projections that with the new housing development and
I think
potential
just
build.
as a suggestion, if you've got 2 research assistants coming on, it might be worthwhile sending them out to do an actual count, because because I think you're going to find the numbers are quite different from what those Stats Canada numbers show. And the second thing is in regards to transportation, I don't see a category that deals with evacuation routes out of the community. Currently, we have one route that is out on Highway 9 that takes us down towards Highway 7. And I know that there's been discussion in the past of secondary evacuation route from the community going up by Deer Lake and going out that way. But as an official community, I think that that's something that should be included in the plan, and so that it becomes a focus of how are we going to accommodate and deal with the potential evacuation needs of the community if Highway 9 became impassable. How do we get people out of here? And if it doesn't remain part of the official community plan, then it'll keep dropping off people's conscience. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Ken Cossey, did you have any comments with regards to the evacuation route? That of
No, I
course
think
we've
it's a
been
great
working on
idea.
for 40 years. Sorry,
I think that's a great idea.
thank you for that. Sorry, Andy?
One more thing, thanks. How about pieces like the plan and all the work that went into the redevelopment or upgrading of the lagoon and beachfront area? Will that form part of the OCP, or that be in there somehow, or is that a separate entity altogether?
No, that will be in there.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I just have a few comments, so just bear with me because my notes are sort of all over the place. It's interesting that you're carrying out the OCP in an election year. You've got an incredibly aggressive schedule ahead of you. That's a little bit of a surprise. It's interesting also looking at the current OCP and values and you know, do they reflect where we are as a community, and is that still reflective today of the vision of where we want to be? So I'm glad that there's measurements in place. And you look at communities like Rossland, Revelstoke, Tofino, the resort municipalities, they're all in the process, or they've just actually completed their OCPs, and a number of them are labeling them, you know, 2030 Rossland, for example. So it's good that we're doing this now, and it seemed the main focus of all these municipal communities seem to be sustainability as well. So I'm glad that that is reflective of ours too, or will be reflective of ours. The 10 goals look good as they reflect, you know, what success looks like for as a community. So that was good to see. Let's see. I have a question with regards to the guidelines, such as the streetscape guidelines, the design guidelines, the form and character, our servicing agreements. Will they be done as separate documents so that they're easier to update rather than having them the main body of the OCP? Or yeah, just confirm that those will be separate documents.
I wouldn't want to keep them as a separate document because the requirement of the legislation is that we have to adopt everything for the OCP as a schedule. So we got to call it Schedule A. Like the OCP bylaw itself is only 2 pages long, and then everything else will be the schedule. And if it's not identified in the schedule, then we don't have the ability to really to ask developers to abide by those requirements.
Right, but if it's
having said that, we are allowed to do we can do 1 or 2 official community plans. So I'll check that out to see if we can set it up that way.
it just makes sort of sense that the certain specific guidelines, such as the servicing agreements, are a separate schedule, but still part of the OCP, but not of the main body of the OCP for ease of changes down the road. Anyway, that was just a question. Couple of things. So start here. On page 11, the municipal services, such as the sanitary, storm drainage, water, is there room for growth, or like what is the percentage that would be available for growth, or are they at capacity?
My initial discussions with Tyson is that there is room for growth. How much, we don't know yet, but we're still working on all of those, that type of information, because
Okay, so
that becomes part of the scenario when we go to the public, saying that we've got 60% growth potential, 6% growth potential, all of those sorts of things.
Okay, perfect, as long as we're looking at that as well. Another question I have is on page 27. In 2000, at the bottom of the page, it's the housing. In 2016, the median total income for all households was just over 57,000. And the average selling price of a house in August of 2021 was just over 830,000. It just seemed interesting to me that we're, comparing the 2016 salaries were at a very base level. The minimum wage has changed since then, but yet we're comparing them to the 2021 house prices. It's just kind of a shame that we don't have a more updated income for households so that we're comparing apples to apples and not having that 5-year difference. That's just a comment. The other comment I had on page 29 was regarding the soil. And it states that the drainage is poor to very poor. Now, is that addressed at the building permit stage and not the OCP?
Yes, that is.
Okay. Okay, that's something separate then. Oh, that was that. Almost there. Right. And just touching also on a question that Ken Gisborne asked regarding the housing. And it says that, approximately 60% have indicated that the village should not provide a mixture of housing types for all incomes and ages. Well, I would think that that's currently addressed in the range, as Ken stated as well, in the range of housing that is currently on the market, from apartments to small houses to larger homes. I remember when council allowed the development at the the former Tugboat Junction, and that was specifically for small affordable homes. As well, you look at the Schooner development, or I'm not sure what that neighborhood is called, but off of Schooner Place there, those developments are all definitely more affordable than the larger single family homes. So I would think that at some capacity, we are addressing that issue. So I'm not sure why. I would hope that it wouldn't become a larger issue than it is. And it's also, everybody knows that we don't always have a say in what a developer, builds on a specific piece of land. It's kind of out of our hands for a lot of it too. We're not a large enough community where we can actually buy a large plot of land and put in, low cost housing. We don't have that luxury. It's just making a note of that. I did have 2 other questions. One of them was, I just wanted to make sure that the requirements to provide minimum level 2 electric vehicle charging stations on all new builds, so everything from, single family to duplex, townhouse, apartments, recreational as well, that it's all going to be in there, that there is that, they do provide a minimum level of that. Okay.
Yeah, we can do that. And we can also add it in as part of the subdivision servicing requirements and or the zoning bylaw requirements.
Great, because I also understand that there are a number of municipalities right now in the Fraser Valley that are adding that as a bylaw to their current, I had a question with regards to densification. I'm going to put this out there. Because here's the bottom line. If we don't densify with with available lands that there are, taxes will go up. It's a very basic thing. And I think that in all of your open houses and your surveys, residents really need to be aware that it's this or this. If we don't densify, your taxes will go up. It's really simple if you want all these amenities. There's those 14 lots outside of the village office that are currently used for overflow parking. Would there be consideration to rezone them to commercial so there's an opportunity to build 4-story with retail on the bottom? It won't impede the view corridor, and it's a natural flow to the downtown core. Would the village consider rezoning those for densification? Throwing that out there so that can be looked at as well.
Yeah, yes, that's been in the back of our minds for part of the OCP reviews to discuss that.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. That was all my questions. Did anyone, after having any second thought, does anyone have any second thoughts or questions that they wanted to throw on the table at this point? Ken Gisborne does.
Yeah, Sonia, just to follow up to your last comment for that, what's currently designated as overflow parking. And I think maybe not the last meeting, but the one before that, we talked about that issue. And having that, I think part of that discussion was a new village hall was part of it, but also utilization of the various lots. And I think the main issue still remains as long as there is an appropriate alternate overflow parking arrangement that can be made that is within the walking distance of the beach and the amenities on the beachfront that is an alternate to that, then utilizing that space would seem to be more acceptable to people. So whether or not that alternate parking arrangement is in another location or in the development of that site, they do something like saying you can develop portions of it, but then you have to accommodate multi-level parking with green space on the parking structures, like green roof type of situations, to be able to make up for the parking that's taken away from the overflow. So I think that that's not an issue that's can be resolved with a simple change, but I think with a multi-textured approach, that one can be more effectively utilized.
Thanks, Ken. So just a really quick comment. It's not zoned overflow parking. It's just being used for that. And we will leave it in the capable hands of Ken Clossy to figure out how to do that. Thank you. I think at this time, we're going to receive the presentation as presented, and we will move on to the next order of business.
Thank you, Chair. So, Mr. Clossy, do you have anything further to add? We'll just receive the report and file it. Do you require anything else of the members?
No. One thing though, as we go through the process, we will be coming back to you every now and then with a progress update, and as well the possibility of asking questions.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next item, and that's adjournment. To call for adjournment.
Do we have a motion for adjournment from Ken Gisborne, seconded by Donna? All in favor? And our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, Ken, for the presentation.
Thank you. Take care. Stay safe, everybody.
You too.
Thank you, Ken.